So I'm Howard Reingold. I teach here in South Hall at the School of Information. I also teach at Stanford, and I was just saying that that when I walk into the classroom, a couple of things happen. One is I have an open classroom where the chairs and tables are stacked, and the students will invariably come in and put them roughly in rows and columns. And if I don't intervene, they will come back the next time and sit in the same place they sat the first time. That was kind of a clue to me. I had them move it into a circle. But the other thing is, I asked them on the first day of class, why are we, why are we standing here? Why do we all come to this physical place? Do you rush home at 7 o'clock at night to watch your favorite TV show, or do you record it? And so if I have an hour's worth of lecture, as teachers have had for the last 1,000 years, I'll put it on YouTube, which has not existed for 1,000 years. So why are we, I drive for an hour to get here. What are we doing here together? So I think that there are a couple of strong reasons why pedagogy needs to change. The other one is students' minds have wandered since forever, but they've never had the entire internet if you get too boring, and they've never been able to talk with each other about what you're talking about. They've never been able to go and check to see whether what you're saying is actually true or not. And in my experience, there's a percentage, I wouldn't name what percentage it is, of professors who are in denial about that, and they drone on with the same lectures that they've done for the last 30 years. There are teachers who tell the students to shut their laptops, and that's legitimate in a lot of circumstances, but I teach about social media, so I can't do that. So I need to engage students in inquiry about what we're doing using those media.
How has that changed? In other words, so you've raised the issue, but you're no longer just lecturing. For example, do you tee up problems and have them bring it? Do you use the lecture differently? Is the nature of homework?
Well, I have little lectures because I have discovered that the students need what educators call scaffolding around the texts and the discussions, and I've also learned that lectures are for telling the students what's in the texts that you know that they will not read. But I do little 5-minute, 10-minute lectures. I record them and I post embed the video in the first post of a blog and have them comment on it, or the first post of a forum, which you saw, and have them comment on it, so that during the week in my classes, you are expected to participate in between the class meetings through a forum and blog and wiki. There's also more collaborative work. They are used to performing for the teacher. You turn in a paper, the teacher sees it, you get a grade. Performing with each other, constructing knowledge collaboratively, that's somewhat new to them. They're little grade-making machines who are quite competitive and somewhat private. And so that, I don't think that that's the world they're heading into. So, for example, I have co-teaching teams who work with me, and one of the things they do during the class is to identify words and phrases for the lexicon, put that on the wiki, and then during the week between that class and the next class, it's the duty of all the other students to fill that in the wiki. And of course, it's a little strange for them. It's a collective action problem. Some people can free ride on the work of others. It's really entirely up to them how they work that out, but they kind of catch on to that they can put this all together, and with a little bit of effort on each student's part, they get this wonderful collective aggregation of what they've learned in terms of the lexicon, at least.
So if one comes to a session of yours for an hour, after the students have learned to arrange their chairs not in those rows and columns.
Oh, in a circle, specifically.
So is it not, what does it look like? Does it look conversational? Does it look like people are pulling stuff up on the net and contributing? Are you lecturing?
Yes, well, I have 3 screens. We talk about what we talked about last week. I entertain questions. I try to just start with, okay, questions? For them to understand, it's up to them to inquire. I will tell them what I know, and I do know the subject better than they do, but I think if they dig and construct, it's going to mean a lot more to them than if I deliver it to them. And they're used to, they're very well tuned to what the teacher's saying that they're pretty sure is going to be on the test, and they take the notes and they regurgitate them for the test, and then do they remember it? So having to teach it to each other, I think, requires them to understand it at a very different level. There's just a whole set of practices that, I've picked up. I certainly didn't invent this, but walking into a classroom relatively recently, 5 years ago, after the last 25 years online, it really did strike me that we're dealing with a 1,000-year-old paradigm here that's really not fit for the kind of world that these students are in. There's a lot more to say about the destruction of the authority of the text,
Yeah.
and therefore the requirement to learn how to test information for accuracy on your own. You can't take it for granted because you found it on the internet that it's true. So how do you go about that? That's not something that the education system is preparing students for.
Do you remember George Leonard's book, Education and Ecstasy?
Yes, I do, yes.
I mean, it's like that, finally,
Yes.
that's beginning to fulfill
Yes.
itself.
Oh, and they're so excited when they catch on. Because it takes them a while to really get that I'm saying, look, it's up to you. I'm here. I've got a lot for you, but I'm not going to give it to you. And here's your toolkit. Here's your map. Here's how you can figure it out. I give them a lot, but they have to be active and do it. So the quarter is over now, and I'm reading their. I'm asking them to reflect. This is interesting. It's a common English word. You have to be fairly smart to get into Stanford, get into Berkeley. But apparently, in order to get into Stanford or to Berkeley, you are not really required to or taught how to reflect. And so I'm reading the reflections now, and it's pretty exciting because they are really getting it. Once, they're smart, but they're asleep. They've been put to sleep by the system. They've been put to sleep by sitting in the chairs and the rows and the columns and taking the notes and passively sitting there. Forget that. I think there are a lot of subjects, and they're great lecturers. I'm so prejudiced against lectures because of this. I forced myself. I went and listened for many, many, many hours to great lectures, and there are people who can keep you enthralled for an hour. And by golly, go ahead and download it from YouTube. But why burn all that carbon and cram into a room of 1,000 students or 200 students together to do that? This interaction is what it's about in the classroom.
Thanks.